Well, I am very privileged today to be joined by Kody Thompson, and we are here to talk about the biggest lessons to learn as a business leader. And Kody might look young, but he has masses of experience, and we will dig into all of that as we go through this really great informal kind of interview. So hopefully you will get a lot of value from it. Well, I'm sure you will, to be honest. Looking at this 11-page document he sent me, I think you will definitely learn huge amounts, as I will, I'm sure. So thank you, Kody. It's a real pleasure. Really glad you're joining me, and looking forward to digging into this topic.
Thanks, mate. Really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, really. And yeah, I mean, it's impressive what you've done in the past, but as you were growing from at the beginning, when you really started your journey, how did you kind of get from where you were to where you are now?
Well, I started as a freelance graphic designer. Actually, before that, I started as a youth pastor. So I was running programs for high school kids, and then the church that I was a part of saw what I was doing, and I got employed in the church that I was a part of. And so I did that for about 3 or 4 years, working mostly with young people, running programs in high schools. And then I took on a volunteer position in a church on the other side of the country, and I needed to make some money. So I started freelancing as a graphic designer, and I thought I would kind of do it for, 6 months until the church could afford to pay me. And long story short, that freelance business turned into a subscription website company that we built to about $3.5 million in revenue a year. And I sold that business about 8 years later. And so, and stepped into the business that I'm working on now, which is WorkPod. So it was a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest. I never anticipated to be running a business. It was sort of like I started just as a freelancer, and then I guess realized that I was good at what I was doing, and just started hiring people. And then, you get a few years down the track and look back and realize that, you haven't done a bad job. And so, it was a bit of a surprise to me, to be honest, to get into business like I have.
Amazing. So being a youth pastor must have helped, like, with your listening abilities, I would think, and your communication skills.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of skills you learn as a pastor that are translatable to business. Like, even, for example, public speaking. Once I started in business, I started getting opportunities to speak at conferences, which is how I marketed most of my products that I was selling. And people would always comment, because I was like 23 years old or something like that. And I would be speaking at conferences, and people would comment on how comfortable you were on stage, even if there was a large audience there. But when you're in church, you're doing that like every week. So by the time I was 23 years old, I'd probably spoken in front of, maybe 20, 30,000 people or something like that in the last like 2 or 3 years. So you kind of like get some skills that I don't know another place you get that opportunity to speak in public so much as when you're sort of pastoring in church and running church services and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely there were skills like that, and building teams, and because most of the teams in church are volunteers, most people aren't getting paid. So you're motivating and engaging with people who are there voluntarily. And so you've really got to know how to rally around people and create a sense of fun and community within the team. Otherwise, people aren't going to volunteer their time.
Of course, I've had to deal with some volunteers when I was in the wine industry back in the day, and it's really very, very difficult to deal with those people, because they're kind of there because they have a mission, right? Like, there's a purpose. They have a purpose. I'm not quite sure what that purpose is, but they know what it is. But I think once you work out why they're there, then it kind of makes it a bit easier, doesn't it? But it's a big lesson, most definitely, because then if you can motivate people that are not getting paid anything, right, then you can motivate people who are getting paid in a much easier way, can't you, at the end of the day?
That's right. And that's what I found. So those skills are really helpful. And so I feel very grateful for the opportunities that I had there, because definitely it made a huge difference when I started running a business.
So what about like friends and family and stuff like that? Like we had a little conversation about that before, and you know, over the years, people obviously see you grow into the person that you are now, and they've seen you grow. But do you think that it can be kind of detrimental to sort of tell people too much along the way, because they kind of, maybe they're not encouraging as you would like them to be, perhaps?
Yeah, I guess there's been people that have, like, understand you from a specific period in time. Like if they were, friends with you when you're in high school, or if they, knew me as a youth pastor. And so later on in life, they might still look at you the way that you were, back then, and don't necessarily understand like what your life looks like today. To be honest, the thing that I struggled with more was just feeling awkward to talk about, like, my challenges in business. Like for example, if I recently went through selling one of my companies, and it was we got quite a lot of money for the sale of the business, but there was also complications with the buyer, paying all of the money that was due for the purchase of the business. And you can't tell everyone about that. Like if I tell someone who one of my friends who's not involved in business, you can feel sometimes awkward talking about money, that amount of money, for example, or talking about your problems that you feel like maybe they don't understand what you're going through. So certainly I've felt like that before in my journey, where people have, maybe not had those same experiences. And so I've felt kind of uncomfortable talking about it, not wanting them to think that I'm, trying to brag about what I've achieved or something like that. So I guess that's, been something that's been challenging over the years, going from, having nothing. I was earning like 36 grand a year as a youth pastor. So like you're barely making ends meet. And then, to what we're doing now, that's been something that I've found challenging at times.
Yeah, I can imagine. So obviously that means that you're changing your social circles as well, right? So you're limiting the amount of information that you're giving to the people who know you, and also you're changing your social circles, maybe getting a coach or multiple coaches in order to help you to get to the next level as a business leader. Is that a sort of fair thing to say?
Yeah, I think so. I try to stay connected with, like, I've still got a lot of friends who are not in business. It's just that you can't sometimes feel like you can talk about that stuff with them. And so you end up having more in common with other people that are in business. And so you can talk about those things with them. Thankfully, a lot of my friends, like I have different things in common with them. Like I live on a farm. And so some of my friends live on property as well. And so we can, connect around hunting, and we've all got cattle. And so we can connect on those types of things. But when it comes to business, I don't always share all of that stuff with them because, I guess I don't want to come across like I'm trying to brag about what we're doing. And so you tend to talk about challenges in your business with other people that kind of understand those challenges. So you end up with sort of, I guess, different circles of people that you spend time with, and perhaps you're not always sharing, the complete picture with every person in those different circles.
Yeah. I have that actually. And also when you understand business and your friends maybe don't understand business at all, like it's a really interesting piece, isn't it? Like being able to have friends who, maybe in a class that you go to, or they might be farmers, or it's just fascinating, isn't it? That how you can sort of segment your life in a way to sort of to be like that. So as you became a business leader, what do you think was like the toughest thing that you had to go through at the beginning?
I think just like dealing with the stresses of I think initially the biggest problem was the stress of like upsetting clients as the business grew. Because when I was a freelancer, I was the one dealing with all of the clients. And so I was able to control everything, control the experience that the customers had because they were only dealing with me. And then even when I hired 1 or 2 staff, I was still the one interacting with the customers and they were doing back end work. But once you start to build a team and build more of like a product and you're building out systems and having other team members take on larger chunks of the work, there would be times where customers wouldn't have like the best experience. And I remember, early on when clients would have a really poor experience, it would really bother me on a personal level. I would go to sleep and I wouldn't be able to sleep at night thinking about a particular customer being upset or things of that nature. And then, as the business grows, I still care about the customers, by the way, as the business grows, but it's funny how like those types of things, you kind of develop thicker skin, I guess, and you don't take it personally. Like I still care if a customer has a bad experience, but it doesn't like define me personally as my own like human being. And so you develop ways to deal with that type of pressure and stress. And so I found like along the journey, there's been a whole bunch of that where, you kind of at the start, things that used to cripple you, like a year later, suddenly those things don't bother you anymore. So it's amazing how just doing repetitions, you get more, used to the challenges of running a business and you get better at it.
It's funny. It's so relevant to the journey that I've been going on the last 2.5 years with jiu-jitsu. Like it's so relevant to being a white belt in jiu-jitsu for over 2 years, right? and being crushed. You're basically the pressure of someone just crushing you. Every class you go to, and some young guy, I mean, I'm nearly 50 years old, right? And some young person is like just trying to crush you and like, like lock your arm out until you tap and give in, right? And you're submitted, right? And it's so relevant to the journey that we all go through in life that it's actually quite profound what you just said, to be honest. Thank God I got my blue belt last week.
Yeah. I've heard the same story. Friends of mine who do jiu-jitsu, and then there's like one of my friends was talking about the other week. There's a 15-year-old kid at jiu-jitsu who keeps like kicking his ass, and it's just like he's talking about how humbling it is, as he's in his mid-30s, and there's like a teenager who just crushes him every week. He rocks up to class, and it's a good thing to get humbled every now and again, and it keeps you grounded, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. But it's just I just realized, like, I've been thinking a lot about that recently, and it's just like that pain that you sort of go through along the way. It has so much meaning in it. It is so important, I think, actually, because it makes you just learn, right? Because it's like you just get so sick of being where you are that you have to take action and then grow into somebody different, right? But you can't take it for granted. Like when you get to become that new person that you are, you can't take it for granted. You still got to continue working on yourself, right? Like all the time. Yeah.
It's funny because some people will go through the same pain and they get crushed and never get up. Like I've always found that interesting. Even as a youth pastor, you would meet 2 siblings, for example, even sometimes like similar age, and then their parents, for example, would get divorced, and then you would watch the outcome of that stress on the children, which is awful, of course. But it's interesting how some will go through that, and it'll fuel their fire, and they become like a greater person. And then for others, it's like that pain can affect them sometimes, for the rest of their life or for an extended period of time. It's like they're not able to get over the experiences that they've gone through. So I've always found that fascinating, that, you know, that pressure has the ability to bury you, or it has the ability to, like, you know, you can shake it off and step up to the next level. And yeah, I've always found that fascinating. So I've always tried to find ways that I can take the experiences I've got, you know, been through, and try to make me a better person if I can.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's so much you just said there that's so relevant to business and the journey that we go on as freelancers, as business people, as entrepreneurs, because we're all, at the end of the day, right? I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, okay, so, you know, you get $1 billion, say you get $1 billion, right? Okay. You sell your company, you become really super wealthy, but you're on to the next thing, right? Like, and like when I interviewed Stanley Tucci, one of the most famous actor, producer, directors in the world, right? You probably know who he is, I imagine, but if you don't, it's okay. But basically, he was, when he finishes a movie, he's like, right, what's next?
Yeah.
And he achieves something. It's like, what's next? And like my mentor, Stephen J. Manning, he's the most disappointed person in the room when something goes well, because he just looks at it and he's like, yeah, but it could have been better. And it's exactly the same with jiu-jitsu. It's the same with business. Like it's so highly relevant, and you know, but it's so difficult in the early stages of people's careers, and even at the beginning of maybe a change of career, because there's so much work, right, that needs to be done to get from zero to, I don't know, driving in second gear as an example. It's like how, I don't know how people can actually do that anymore, you know, because it's just demoralizing, right? It's tough for people.
It's funny though, because once you've built a business once, it's like, it's amazing how much easier it is the second time round. Like, I know when I built my, you know, web development company the first time, you know, it took me like, I guess 9 years to go from zero to break through 3 million a year. It was like about a 9-year journey. And then when I launched WorkPod, which is the business that I'm working on at the moment, we did over 3 million in the second year. So, and then I've got another business that I'm a part of, GP Hero, and it'll do 3 million probably in its 3rd or 3.5 years. And I don't run that business particularly. I'm just one of the owners of the business. But once you've done it before, it's like easier the second time round. I think I overcomplicated so much stuff when I started my first business, and you do a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't achieve any results. And then, but when you've done it before, you kind of know where your sweet spots are as a business leader, and you can kind of focus on the things that you know work and get results for you in your particular skill set. And then you also develop a network. So you have people that you can call. Like we were talking about this earlier, like if you've got a challenge in your business, you've got people on dial. You can ring them, and just one conversation with the right person can make all the difference. So I guess for anyone listening to this, if you're starting a business, you know, make sure you keep all those relationships on the way as you build your business. And it does get easier, you know, once you've done it once before, you know, this might only be business 1 that you start. And when you sell that, you can move on to number 2, number 3, and it gets easier as you get more runs on the board, and you've done it once before. It becomes like muscle memory, and you can rinse and repeat the stuff that worked the first time, and you can avoid the things that didn't work last time. So, you know, that's definitely been an encouragement for me as I've done this, you know, second business.
Yeah. There are so many things that you can waste time on that actually are completely irrelevant, and you find yourself going. But that's the same with people in businesses who want to become business leaders, or even who are business leaders, because we all get stuck, right? Because we're human at the end of the day. And if we care about the details, then we worry about the details. But experience, it makes such a difference. Like without that experience, it could take forever, and you might never, ever start on your journey to doing whatever it is you think you might want to do.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree.
But there's so much opportunity right now in the world. It's literally we are overrun with opportunities to grow businesses, change careers, and do so many things. Certainly with technology being the way that it is, and also opportunities. Whilst people think, well, it's been done before, is what a lot of people say. Well, it's been done before. It's like, okay, well, sure, things might have been done before, but if you can go in and you can have a different approach and have a different skill set, different mindset, you can build a substantial business really quickly, can't you?
Well, it's interesting. Like the other argument to that would be if it hasn't been done before, it might not be a good idea. You know, like a lot of the best businesses were just like a small tweak on an existing idea that was already out there. Like take, for example, like I love the Costco story. I don't know if you know much about that particular business, but they're
Not really.
You know, one tweak, for example, for Costco was selling from the same place that they warehouse their products. So previously, you know, these large companies would warehouse their stock somewhere else, and then they would transfer it to a showroom and then sell it. And Costco was one of the first businesses to just turn their warehouse into their showroom. And now, of course, at least in Australia, a lot of our large stores do that, like Bunnings and other hardware stores, or in America, there's the home hardware type model. And there's so many, you know, Walmart and so many other businesses that have mimicked now what Costco did. But it was a very small tweak, but it was the thing that catapulted their growth, was just taking something that already existed and then just coming up with a smarter way to do it.
Absolutely. So what do you think the essential qualities or attributes are of a successful business leader?
I think adaptability, like the ability to adapt when things change in your business, is really like a critical attribute to have, because as your business grows, your role as a business leader changes. Like when you've got no staff, for example, you got to be able to wear all the hats. You're like doing finances, sales, product delivery, admin, you're doing everything. And then you get a few staff, and then now suddenly you're managing staff. And then as that grows to a large team, now you've got a management team, you've got to have policies, you've got to have, structure, you've got to have cadence to your meetings, and everything changes. So what I found has been one of the challenges I've faced is, as the business grows quickly, your role as the CEO of the business changes very rapidly. You know, as the business grows, the needs that the business has for you will change. And so being able to change quickly and adapt is important. And then also the stuff you're talking about with technology and other things, there's factors that will come from outside the business that will require you to be able to change direction and make decisions sometimes quite quickly. And if you don't have the ability to adapt, I think that's going to be one of the things that will be challenging if you're running a business. For the business to survive, if you're not able to change quickly, you won't be able to grow something quickly.
Yeah, that all makes sense completely. So, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made in business, and what did you learn from it?
I think one of the things that I was thinking about the other day was a particular staff member that was really talented, and I wasn't able to find the right role for her in the business. And she ended up moving on eventually. And I've always thought about that because she was a high performing team member, but I just never was able to figure out where she fitted. And it's something that I work really hard on with my staff, is trying to place them somewhere that they're going to be successful in the organization, and try to find ways to help them to level up as individuals, but also in the way that they perform in the business. And so Yeah, I think about that a lot, and I guess it's just encouraged me, and I guess what I've learned is to really try to not think everyone thinks the way I think, and even takes learns the way that I learn, or is motivated by the things that I'm motivated by. Like, everyone has their own personalities, their own way of learning, and I've tried to be more aware of that when I'm dealing with the talent that's in my team, to try to find ways that I can position them in and motivate them in the way that's going to take them to the next level. And you only figure that out by doing it wrong and not getting the results. And so, yeah, I think they're some of my biggest mistakes, if I think about it, would be missing out on top talent. And it hasn't happened very many times. I've been able to retain most of the good people in my organizations, but there's been a few along the way where I was like, man, that person's really killing it now, and I wish I had been able to get them in the right position, because I know they would have been successful, but I just didn't have the skills or the insight to place them in the right positions at the time.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I mean, at the end of the day, hindsight is a wonderful thing. It's you know, it's a funny world that we live in, right? It really is. So when it comes to being a business leader, what's one of the best business deals that you've ever done, and why did it work so well?
Well, I had a business coach named Dale. He was my when I started my freelancing business. My dad told me I needed a business coach because my business was growing out of control and I didn't know what I was doing. And I heard of this guy named Dale, and I went along to his program, and I just started to do everything that he told me to do, and it was working. You know, he helped me to understand the importance of systems in business. He helped me to understand the importance of having task management tools, and just, it's all very basic stuff now, but I didn't know any of that stuff before. And so it was groundbreaking for me and really helped me to get some, structure in my business. And then, cause my business was growing so rapidly, he basically asked to invest in my business, and he invested very early on. So he certainly got a great deal out of the growth of my web development company, because he got in very early. And so I made him a lot of money in that deal, but I still feel like, I won out in that deal. I think we both won in that deal. But for me, I've learned so much from him. We've been business partners now for about 6 or 7 years. And so he's my business partner in WorkPod as well. And we've invested in 2 other companies together. And so that was probably my best deal that I've ever made. I didn't need his money when he asked to invest in the business, but what I wanted was his experience. He's about 10 years older than what I am. And he's got that extra 10 years of experience in business, and he's just got so much value to give. And so building a relationship with him and becoming friends with him and his wife, Catherine, and his family has been, I've learned so much, and a lot of my best friends have been introduced through Dale and his network. So that's definitely been one of the best decisions that I've made.
That's absolutely fantastic, because a lot of people don't think that you should mix business and pleasure. They don't agree with that. I actually think it depends on the people, right? And at the end of the day, if you're creating a life that you really want to, you really enjoy, that you don't want a vacation from, and if you're doing that, then why not have business relationships with people that you really like and you can be friends with, right? Like it's you
don't want to go to work and with people you don't want to be business partners with someone that you don't like, for sure. But I would say that the most important thing in a business relationship is that you share the same values. And I've seen a lot of business partnerships not work. But for Dale and I, the reason I think it's worked is because we have very similar values in terms of like how we approach business. Like even simple things like when you're going in to make a deal, you're trying to create a win-win, and that's been important, because when you're talking to suppliers or dealing with a problem customer or whatever, if one of you is always trying to find a way to get on top of a client or a supplier, then those types of things will rub you the wrong way. And so you got to make sure before you have a business relationship with someone where you're sharing equity in a company, you got to make sure you got the same values. If you don't, it's going to be a disaster. And I've seen it a lot of times in other people's businesses, and I'm always so grateful that Dale and I have had such a great working relationship.
I'm just grinning away because, excuse me, because I totally agree 100% with that. 100%. Yeah. It's quite amusing, actually. So what is the best piece of business advice anyone has ever given you?
Best piece of business advice. I mean, this is going to sound like such a simple one, but one of the things Dale told me early on was, and it's always stuck with me, is to ask yourself, will I ever have to do this again? And if the answer is yes, build a system. And that's been the way that I've always tried to build my businesses and encourage my staff to build out systems in their roles as well. It's such a nerdy thing to say, talk about systems in business, but honestly, having solid processes is the key to having freedom as a business leader. If you've got great policies and procedures and stuff in place, then you can empower your talent to really rock their role, and it frees you up to take a helicopter view of the business and spend time working on improving the business rather than being stuck in the day-to-day processes in the business. So that's probably been one of the best pieces of advice, has just been to ask yourself, am I ever going to have to do this again? It's going to take longer the first time, but make sure you build a system, and then next time, you won't have to do it. You can get someone else, you can delegate it out. So that's been a great piece of advice.
So yeah, it's absolutely correct. So before we scoot off, because I know time is a premium for you, obviously you're into planning and stuff like that, right? So what are some of your future plans, business or personal, for the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, for business, WorkPod is the project that I'm mostly focused on at the moment. And so what we do is we help people build teams in the Philippines. And so right now, over the last 2 years, we've placed about 1,000 staff in the Philippines for our clients. And our 5-year target is to create 10,000 jobs in the Philippines. So right now we're placing about 50 staff a month through WorkPod for our clients. And in order to achieve that goal, we need to get to 200 a month, placing 200 staff every month. And so we've been able to double we're doing about 25 staff a month in January. When I came on full-time as the CEO, I had to stay as the CEO of the web development company until that deal had gone through. And so since January, we've doubled it, but we need to double it and then double it again. And if we can do that, we'll hit our target of creating 10,000 jobs. And that's, I guess, from a business standpoint, that's the big goal that we have at the moment. If we can achieve that, in the Philippines, they say, the government says that one full-time employee financially provides for 20 Filipinos. So if we can help 10,000 people get jobs, then we'll be impacting 200,000 people.
Wow.
And that gets me really excited. And then our 10-year goal from there would be to go from 10,000 to 50,000. And if we're able to do that, then we'd be helping 1 million Filipinos. And so that's kind of like my big business goals. And then my family goals, we have a farm in northern New South Wales of Australia. It's a 100-acre farm. And we've got a house that we're renovating on the farm at the moment. And my wife's family's all moving out. And so we've got this house we're renovating so that they can move in. So I just love creating community, around us. We've got a great church that we're a part of. And so we always have, we're kind of the ones that have everyone over at our house. So my personal goals would just be to do that, spend as much time with my family, to spend time with my friends. And also I want to create sort of like a legacy property here where my parents get older, they can, retire here on my property and we can look after them. And yeah, so that's kind of my personal goals.
Super. Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, as I did before.
Thanks, Nat.
And I'm looking forward to spreading lots of positivity. I love your half glass full attitude. I think it's absolutely super. So thanks for listening, everyone. We appreciate you, and do check out the links wherever you are watching this.